Tonight on The ReidOut.
Let's dance because we deserve it. But tomorrow we go back down into the valley to do the work.
I don't want any of you to stop dreaming. I don't want any of you to stop believing in America. I want you to believe in America and continue to believe in the Constitution and believe in our elected officials most of all.
The triumph of Senator Raphael Warnock narrowly defeating his unqualified Trump-backed opponent. But will Republicans actually do any soul-searching after another defeat for Team Trump? I think you know the answer. Also tonight, democracy was on the ballot in the midterms. Now it's on the line in the Supreme Court, with conservative justices possibly set to give state legislatures the power to overturn the will of the voters. And shades of January 6th in Germany, where dozens of people are under arrest, charged with plotting to overthrow the democratically elected government. But we begin tonight with a reminder of what Georgia voters rejected on Tuesday.
So I've been telling this little story about this bull out in the field with 6 cows, and 3 of them are pregnant. So you know you got something going on.
I don't know if you know vampires are some cool people, are they not? But I'm going to tell you something that I found out. A werewolf can kill a vampire. Did you know that? I never knew that, so I didn't want to be a vampire anymore. I wanted to be a werewolf.
This election is more than Herschel Walker. This election is about the people.
Why are they bringing pronouns in our military? Pronouns? What the heck is a pronoun?
Well, Georgia and America averted that disaster last night and instead made history, sending Democrat Raphael Warnock back to the Senate, giving Georgia's first black senator, only the 11th black senator in American history, a full 6-year term. Choosing a candidate with competence, Georgians smacked down the ignorance and cynicism of Republicans' decision to stand by Walker, who they now freely admit was a disaster. One Republican told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, quote, Herschel was like a plane crash into a train wreck that rolled into a dumpster fire and an orphanage and then an animal shelter. You kind of had to watch it squinting through one eye between your fingers, unquote. Now, of course, it is a huge blow to the former guy, as yet another of his hand-picked candidates went down in flames. And while Republicans are licking their wounds, Democrats are planning for the future. With a critical edge, an outright 51-seat Senate majority with huge implications, giving Democrats more leeway on votes. It means relying less on Vice President Kamala Harris to break ties and breaks the stranglehold of conservative Democrats Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. It also means more power over Senate committees, allowing for things like faster confirmations of judicial nominees. And that is a big boost for President Biden, who called to congratulate Senator Warnock, saying Georgia voters stood up for our democracy, rejected ultra-MAGAism, and most importantly, sent a good man back to the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the new majority is a sign of relief, a sigh of relief for Democrats.
They say all good things come to those who wait, and this outcome is absolutely worth the wait. The people of Georgia are better off. The Democratic Senate caucus is better off, and America is better off because he ran and won.
Schumer was on hand later to welcome the newly reelected Senator Warnock to the Capitol today, as Senator Warnock proclaimed that Georgia had done it again. Because it's not just a win for Senator Warnock. It's a victory for the Georgia voters who waited in long lines, combating Republican attempts to make it harder to vote. It's also a victory for organizers like LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter and Nsé Ufot of the New Georgia Project, who worked tirelessly in the face of voter suppression to get Georgians registered and to the polls. And by the way, it's a victory for Stacey Abrams, who didn't make it to the mountaintop in her race for governor, but whose work since 2014 on the ground, registering voters for voters of color and young voters, laid the groundwork, showing Democrats that they can win in Georgia. But importantly, Senator Warnock's win is a victory for Black Americans, quite frankly, who can definitely avoid the humiliation of enduring 6 years of Herschel Walker's incompetence in the Senate after being trotted out by Republicans as a cynical insult. As Charles Blow writes in the New York Times, the best that could be hoped for was a Black person who was willing to fall in line and vote with the party. Walker had proven that he would do that. He would be a willing puppet for their ventriloquism, and he came dangerously close to winning. This will remain a stain on the Republican Party. Joining me now is Don Calloway. Democratic strategist and founder of the National Voter Protection Action Fund, and Tom Bonnier, Democratic political strategist and CEO of Target Smart. We love a numbers guy. So thank you guys for being here. Don, I do want to start with you. I just want to start, Herschel Walker was only one of several Trump candidates who went down in flames. I'll just read you the list. Herschel Walker, Kari Lake, Blake Masters, Mark Fincham, Tudor Dixon in Michigan, Christina Caramo, Doug Mastriano, who's Mehmet Oz, Adam Laxalt, Don Balduck, Diane Cox, Tim Michaels, Lee Zeldin in New York, Darren Bailey, Derek Schmidt, Jeff Deal, Scott Jensen, Tim Crockett, Lee Ortley. I mean, all of his candidates went down. The only one who actually managed to get through was J.D. Vance, who is sort of an embarrassing, sort of less interesting Ted Cruz, but he was really Peter Thiel's candidate. But let's talk about Herschel for just a moment, because Herschel really was kind of a ventriloquist dummy. For somebody like Lindsey Graham, who I just want to play for you. I hope we have it. This is cut one. This was Lindsey Graham's case for electing Herschel Walker. Here it is.
He changes the entire narrative of the left. We're a party of racists, Sean. Me and you're a racist. The Republican Party's racist. Well, what happens when the Republican Party elects and nominates Herschel Walker, an African-American black Heisman Trophy winner, right? Olympian? It destroys the whole narrative. They're scared to death of Herschel Walker because if Herschel Walker becomes a Republican, maybe every other young child in America of color might want to be a Republican.
Nothing about that case, Don, was about the state of Georgia or about Herschel Walker's ability to be a senator. It was all about him being essentially a ventriloquist dummy for people like Lindsey Graham who want to say, I'm not racist, look at this black guy, and yeah, I control him, so he'll just do what I say. I'm just going to let you talk about that because I think the insult was to black people, but it was to black men very particularly.
Yeah, and I think that people smarter than I, including you last week, have been building this narrative over the course of the last week, and it's absolutely correct. This is a incredibly racist and insulting choice by the Republican Party, who decided that they could pick any black man off the fence with name recognition, and that would be sufficient enough. That is how much they respect black people. But I'm not asking for the modern day Republican Party or political apparatus to respect black people, but they should recognize something very important, which I think that they don't. MAGAism is not only racist, but it's anti-intellectual. It's bad policy and it's bad strategy, and it results in losses. Yes, it did give us a very dark political period of 7 years, but ultimately people don't like that stuff, black or white, because not even good white folks, who some of them might even be Republican, that's a joke, not even they want to be represented by these deeply unqualified, fundamentally bad people who have no business around the discussions that consider American leadership. So it's just dumb policy, in addition to being really fundamentally racist. And I'm glad that you put him in the context of that other island of misfit toys at the beginning, all of whom lost, because it's important to recognize that they're not moving away from MAGAism. You don't see Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan doing the rounds on all the networks because their party has fundamentally now decoupled itself from these heinous policy values. You see it because you're starting to see cracks in the political apparatus of MAGA. All of the words coming out of Mar-a-Lago suggest that it's cattywampus there. That's a kind word. And there's, we're really at the beginning of the end of MAGA as a political powerhouse. That's the reason they're moving away. That's the reason why you'll see the Jeff Duncans and Glenn Youngkins. But be not fooled. These people have the same really fundamentally oppressive political and priority policies.
Yeah, and Tom, I just want you, because the thing is, I think I'm going to let everybody become a political pundit around your dinner table. Let me just give you the dirty little secret. The reality is it's just a math. Politics is just a math game, right? I'm not teaching Don Calloway anything he doesn't already know. It's a math game. 60% of 6 in 10 white voters are Republicans. 8 in 10 non-white voters are Democrats. 9 in 10 black voters are Democrats. 7 in 10 Asian American, and 6 in 10 Hispanics. That's just reality. And so the name of the game in politics is, can you take that 60% of white voters and make it 58? You make it 58, all of a sudden you get Barack Obama to be president. You just have to, you can't peel off all white voters. You can only peel off, but if you get 2%, that's it. That's because you're getting, if you're a Democrat, you're getting 80% of the non-white voters. Okay, that is, so talk to me about this Republican strategy, because they want to now rethink. Their whole policy and strategy is meant to be directed at white voters. It's not directed at black voters. So what they said to them in that list I read to you is that you want show business, you want election denial, You want, Dr. Oz was the showbiz piece. But you also can't vote early. You can't vote absentee. We're taking away all these other things because we're going to suppress those non-white people and focus on you, white voters, and this is what you want. Talk about that as a strategy, just numerically, while they're also getting rid of the right to choose.
The Republican Party has been a strategic disaster, certainly since Trump came along. But if we think back to 10 years ago, after they lost the presidential election in 2012, their postmortem said and acknowledged that they are going to be a minority party if they cannot broaden their appeal beyond white working class voters. And then they didn't follow their own advice. They nominated Donald Trump. They went in the wrong direction. You mentioned early voting. It's probably the biggest strategic blunder a party could make. And we saw after the November general election, Republicans acknowledging this and saying that Democrats beat us. And you see that in Georgia. You see that black voters turned out in the early vote and really delivered this election. Republicans acknowledged that, but they had a month to try to at least do a little bit better in Georgia. But what happened? They actually did worse. Democrats were a larger share, despite Governor Kemp's SB 202 voter suppression bill that shortened this period. We see those long lines. That was voter suppression in action. But despite all of that, they actually adding up, they're making strategic blunder after strategic blunder.